Hey guys, it's your soul brother, EDDBUD here, back with another 100 mile update video. Today I got up knowing that I needed about 10 miles before I could do my 100 mile Pegasus 37 review for you. I managed to find it within myself to get out and put another 10 into these. On went the short shorts, the headband and the Pegasus 37s. 100 miles down now, and here are my thoughts. Just to let you know, these are a pair of shoes that I did purchase myself, not been sent to me for review or anything along those lines. These are my own honest opinions. So 10 miles today, that's about 16 kilometers for those of you who like the kilometer conversions. Around about 8 minutes per mile average pace, which works out to be around about 5 minutes per kilometer. Keeping that heart rate nice and low, around about 134 beats per minute average over the 10 miles. Let's get to the upper first. So to negate the very low profile upper, certainly in the toe box of the Pegasus 37, I switched out the insoles. Those thick Nike insoles just weren't working for me. Far too thick and they were pushing my foot right up against the upper in the toe box. I switched out and put in some from my Hoka Rincons. These thinner insoles gave a little bit more room in the toe box, slightly less constricted sort of feeling. The upper doesn't seem to be really roomy at all. I would suggest possibly half sizing up. I don't know if they do a wide fit in this shoe. It's certainly worth looking at though if you have a wider foot. I've got quite a narrow foot in fairness, and I found it quite a constrictive feel. The lockdown on this shoe is flawed to me. The side lace loops here give a huge amount over the first 20 or 30 miles, and it really made for quite an uncomfortable and inconsistent ride. To achieve a reasonable lockdown over the top of the foot and to stop my foot from sliding round and slipping inside the 37, I had to crank the laces quite tight, but lock still remains inconsistent even up to 100 miles in this shoe. I found that I needed a thicker sock when using the Pegasus 37 to give a little more protection at the top of the foot here, just before the ankle. That tongue's quite thin. It's not very padded either. I just feel for purpose it's just not quite there. Just needs a little more padding there, Nike. Where you've got to cinch the laces so tight here, where the laces not together, it just put a lot of pressure on my foot there. I had some real discomfort actually in some socks. Unless I got the tightness, the socks and the insoles just right in this shoe, it just wasn't happening for me. There were a few times, a few runs where everything just fell together and it felt okay. The shoe seems breathable enough, though we have had some warmer weather here in the UK, and there were a few times where I would have liked to wear a much thinner no-show sock just to keep myself a little cooler, but wasn't really an option in this shoe for me. Also, perhaps wearing the thinner sock, I would have had to cinch the shoes even tighter, and that wasn't really a nice feeling. I'd say that certainly an improvement in terms of smell with this shoe. The Pegasus 35 was certainly quite a smelly shoe. The Pegasus 36 Shield was a very smelly shoe. But this one, I'm going to do the smell test for you after 100 miles. Here we go. 6 out of 10. Very slight odour there, but it's not too bad. Certainly in comparison to the breath of beast. That's a thing you don't ever want to experience early in the morning, as I have to every day. I do think perhaps the laces are slightly to blame with that weird inconsistent lockdown on the upper. They feel a little coarse, but they don't seem to sort of stick together when you tie them up. They just don't sort of grip, and they seem to loosen over time. For me, quite a disappointing upper really. It just needed too much messing around to make it a usable shoe out the box. So for upper, after 100 miles for me in the Pegasus 37, it's a 1.5 out of 3. Midsole now. So switching out the Nike insoles saved me about 20 grams of weight on this shoe. I managed to get it to just over 300 grams in my UK size 11. Certainly a shoe that for me I purchased thinking I can use it as an everyday sort of running shoe. Not one that's aimed at tempo or speed work, just aimed to grind the miles out. So has it lived up to my expectation? I found initially the underfoot feel in the Pegasus 37 was quite firm. I didn't really find it particularly responsive. Certainly in the heel and the midfoot, it just felt a little dead to me. Though I could feel the front Air Zoom unit, it wasn't particularly prevalent. Switching the insoles out and suddenly I got a slightly better feel. With those thinner Hoka insoles in there, I could really feel the Air unit. It was quite enjoyable in fact. As the miles wore on, after about 50 or so, I felt the midsole began to mellow out a little bit. It became more enjoyable for those easy type pace efforts. One thing that I did do with this shoe, which seemed to make a big difference and improve the midsole feel, was really work that midsole. I spent loads of time flexing it like this. It really did seem to free the React up, and it created a much better feel. Not something I've had to do with lots of shoes. I do it with race shoes occasionally just to free them up a little bit, but something to bear in mind. That seemed to give the air unit a pronounced feel as well. Just seemed to be a little bit more present underfoot. I'd say that at 100 miles, the midsole's probably feeling the best it has done so far in this shoe. As long as that lacing and lockdown are okay, of course. Too heavy really for any meaningful speed work, but for munching the miles it does a reasonable job after a little fooling around with it. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 3 for midsole after 100 miles. On to outsole now. So the rubber in the midfoot area here is showing a little bit of wear, but that seemed to stop actually after about 20 or 30 miles, and I seem to be left with the same kind of wear that I have done for the last 70 miles. I do wonder whether we really need this much rubber on the outsole of this shoe. It's almost like a trail shoe. That's what it feels like to me. You can hear the rubber sort of clacking against the ground. The rubber is quite malleable and the lugs that appear here are actually quite pronounced. There's some reasonable depth to them. I think you could probably get away with using this as a multi-purpose shoe. Perhaps if you wanted to go walking through some light trails, do a little bit of light trail running, could be alright. There's not much protection for your foot, but if you're just doing light trails, should be fine. Just for a road shoe, it just seems like a lot of rubber. Handles gravel and dirt really well, as you would expect for a road shoe. It's fine on road, pavements, tarmacked areas, and aside from that wear up in the midfoot here, there's not really any wear to speak of on the rest of the outsole. I'd say it's probably the most successful part of this shoe so far. As such, I'm going to give it a 2.3 out of 3 for outsole after 100 miles. Value now. So this shoe sits just around the 105 Earth credits area, and that area is a very congested market. Loads and loads of shoes that this thing's got to be better than for me to recommend it. I'd suggest the Nova Blast is a much more cushioned shoe around that price. It still doesn't have a perfect upper, but there's some great durability there, and I think it's an overall better out-the-box package than the Pegasus 37. That Clifton 7 that I've tried very recently, I think it's going to be quite a dependable shoe. Lots of the viewers are telling me that they've put loads of miles into their Cliftons and they still feel good. Certainly a more comfortable upper in that shoe than the 37, and a more consistent lockdown with a similar level of cushion. Let's not forget the Energy 2 from Reebok. You can often find that one for as little as £50. In my opinion, that's a far better cushioned shoe than the React stuff in the 37, and a very enjoyable ride at easier paces. And I've easily ran some faster paces in that shoe too. If this shoe fits, I think you could get some great value out of it. Just over £100. Certainly the React's gonna soak up those miles. I don't really feel it's as versatile a shoe as perhaps the Pegasus 35 or the 36. Just seems to be getting heavier this series. I just don't think we need it. Certainly in the higher sizes. I mean, they're ridiculously heavy if you go up to a 12 or a 13. As a slight runner as well, it's just too cumbersome for me, this one. I like something that I can turn the pace up if I want to, and this one just locked me into a certain pace zone and that was it. Overall, I feel that the upper just really lets this shoe down. It feels like a real step backwards rather than a step forwards for the Pegasus line. This is Nike's staple daily shoe, apparently one that's sold more than any other. Supposedly the shoe for every runner. I don't feel that is the case anymore. Implementation of technology and to further lean towards aesthetics rather than performance of the shoe. For value, I'm going to give this one 1.7 out of 3. If I've done my calculations correctly, after 100 miles, that leaves us with a score of 7.5 out of 12. So, bit of a letdown this shoe for me. What do you think about the Pegasus 37? I know some of you have really enjoyed it, others have purchased it and sent it back within days. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. A musical interlude for you. I've been listening to this fantastic album from Steve Maltmus and the Jicks. It's called Wig Out at Jag Bags. The Janitor Revealed and Jay Smooth are my favourite tracks on this one. But there's not really a bad song on here. There's even one about Scrabble. Surreal Teenagers is another really fantastic tune. I've been listening pretty much exclusively to Steve Maltmus over the last couple of weeks, and this is one of my real favourites. So do check this one out. Steve Maltmus and the Jicks, Wig Out at Jagbags. Thanks for tuning in to this 100-mile review of the Pegasus 37. Not a shoe that I'm going to be keeping within the rotation. See, yeah, it didn't really work out for us. It's that React, I think. If you haven't done so already, I'd much appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications of when we launch those new videos. It also helps the channel out a huge amount if you give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you